What does a woman do when the very foundation of her world cracks open, when the man who vowed to cherish her, the man whose child she carries, betrays her in the most cliched and cruel way possible? For one woman, 7 months pregnant and deeply in love, the discovery of a hotel booking for her husband's mistress wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of his. This isn't just a story about heartbreak and infidelity. It's a story about calculated, swift, and devastating justice served in less time than it takes for champagne to chill. Stay with us as we unfold the tale of how a single email confirmation ignited a firestorm that brought a powerful man to his knees. The house was a testament to his success, and she had always believed their shared happiness. A sprawling modern colonial in the manicured suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina, its white columns gleamed under the oppressive July sun. Inside, the air was always a perfect climate-controlled 72 degrees. Every surface, from the quartz countertops in the kitchen to the wide plank oak floors, was polished to a sterile perfection. It was a home designed to be photographed for magazines, a physical manifestation of a life meticulously curated for public consumption. She sat on a plush, cream-colored sofa, one hand resting protectively on the taut swell of her belly. 7 months. The baby, a girl they'd already decided to name Lily, was a lively tenant, her kicks and flutters a constant intimate conversation between them. She traced the intricate floral pattern on a throw pillow, a gift from his mother, and looked around the cavernous living room. It was beautiful. It was expensive. And lately, it had begun to feel like the most beautiful, expensive cage in the world. Her husband was a man who collected accolades the way other men collected watches. A partner at a prestigious architecture firm downtown, he was handsome, charismatic, and ferociously ambitious. He moved through the world with an unshakable confidence that people found intoxicating. She had once found it intoxicating too. Now, it felt like a shield she could no longer penetrate. The change had been gradual, a slow cooling she'd first attributed to the stress of his latest project, a massive corporate campus that promised to be the jewel in his professional crown. He worked later. His phone became a permanent extension of his hand, angled away from her with practiced subtlety. His kisses became fleeting pecks on the cheek that held no warmth. When she tried to talk about it, he'd smile, that disarming smile, and tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "Just stressed, honey," he'd murmur, his voice a low, reassuring hum. "This project is a beast. Once it's done, it'll be you, me, and Lily, I promise." And she, wanting to be the supportive, understanding wife, had believed him. She blamed her unease on pregnancy hormones, on the anxieties of impending motherhood. But a seed of doubt had been planted, and in the fertile ground of her growing loneliness, it had begun to sprout. The computer was their shared device, a sleek iMac, sitting on a custom-built desk in the sunroom. It was a symbol of their transparency, or so she thought. He rarely used it anymore, preferring the privacy of his laptop and phone, but his email was still logged in. It had been an accident, truly. She was looking up a recipe for a prenatal-friendly risotto when a notification banner slid into the top right corner of the screen. It was from the Grand Bohemian Hotel, an upscale artsy boutique hotel downtown, known for its romantic ambiance and rooftop bar. Subject, your reservation confirmation. For this Friday, her heart didn't just sink, it plummeted. A cold, sharp dread pierced through the warm contentment of her afternoon. Maybe it's a surprise for me, she thought, a desperate, flimsy shield against the incoming blow. A last romantic getaway before the baby comes. Her fingers trembled as she clicked on the email. The cursor seemed to shake on the screen. The page loaded, and the details filled the space where her hope had been moments before. Reservation for 2 adults, room type. King suite with balcony, check-in. Friday, July 18th. Check-out, Sunday, July 20th. And then the special requests section, a detail so gratuitously cruel it stole her breath. Please have a bottle of Veuve Clicquot and a bouquet of white tulips in the room upon arrival. It is a special celebration. White tulips. They were her favorite flower. He had given them to her on their first date, on their wedding day, on the day they found out she was pregnant. It was their flower, and the champagne she couldn't drink, a fact he was keenly aware of. The world tilted. The polished floors seemed to ripple, the perfectly arranged furniture dissolving into a blur of beige and cream. This wasn't a surprise for her. This was a carefully planned, romantic weekend for him, and someone else paid for with their shared money, decorated with symbols stolen from their life together. It was a desecration. For a moment, all she could feel was a profound, crushing grief. The life she had so carefully built, the future she had so vividly imagined, a laughing baby girl, a loving husband, by her side shattered into a million pieces. A sob escaped her, raw and guttural. She pressed her fist to her mouth, stifling the sound. She would not fall apart. Not yet. The grief was a physical thing, a stone in her gut. But beneath the stone, a different fire was kindling, the cold, clean flame of fury. He hadn't just betrayed her, he had insulted her intelligence. He had used the very architecture of their love to build a weekend escape for his mistress. He thought she was a fool. He thought she was just the pregnant wife, hormonal and docile, waiting patiently in their gilded cage. He had miscalculated. Badly. She was not just a wife and an expectant mother. Before she had married him, she had been a forensic accountant. She had spent 6 years of her life wading through complex financial records, finding the hidden transactions, the secret accounts, the lies people told with numbers. She was a woman who knew how to follow a trail. With a newfound steadiness, her hands moved across the keyboard. The grief was still there, a howling void in her chest, but her mind was suddenly terrifyingly clear. She saved a PDF of the hotel confirmation to a hidden, encrypted flash drive she kept in her jewelry box. Then she began to dig. If he was this brazen, this arrogant, the hotel booking wouldn't be his first or only mistake. She opened their shared credit card statements, their joint bank accounts. She knew his passwords, his habits, his digital footprint. For years, she had respected his privacy. Now that respect was ash. She worked with a quiet, methodical fury, her background in finance giving her a roadmap. She wasn't just looking for dinner receipts or flower purchases anymore. She was looking for patterns. She was looking for leverage. And in the silent, perfectly climate-controlled house, surrounded by the trappings of a perfect life, she began to unearth the rot that lay beneath. The first stone had been turned. Now she was going to tear down the whole facade. The sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple that were mockingly beautiful. The house grew dark, but she didn't turn on the lights. She preferred the encroaching shadows. They suited her mood. The glow of the iMac screen cast a pale blue light on her face, illuminating the grim set of her jaw. For 3 hours, she had been immersed in a world of numbers and transactions, a world she knew intimately. It was like slipping back into a former skin. The initial search was for the obvious recurring payments to a person she didn't know, suspicious cash withdrawals, unexplained charges, at restaurants she'd never been to. She found them, of course, small, almost untraceable transfers via a payment app to a name she didn't recognize, a junior designer at his firm, according to a quick search on the company's website. There were lunches at expensive downtown bistros on days he was supposedly swamped with meetings. This was the kindling, the proof of the affair itself. But it wasn't enough. A simple affair was a private tragedy. It would lead to a messy, painful divorce where he, with his high-powered attorneys and substantial income, would likely steamroll her. He would paint her as emotional vindictive. They would drag it out for years, whittling away at her spirit and her finances. She refused to let that happen. She wasn't aiming for a simple divorce. She was aiming for total annihilation. Her forensic accounting instincts told her that personal recklessness often bled into professional recklessness. A man who felt entitled to a secret life often felt entitled to other things as well. She shifted her focus from their personal accounts to the business records she had access to. As his wife, she was a co-signer on a business line of credit. He had given her online access years ago during a period when he was traveling extensively, just in case. It was another mistake he was about to regret. She logged in. At first, everything looked normal, but she wasn't looking at the surface. She started pulling detailed expense reports from the past year, cross-referencing them with the project timelines he had so proudly explained to her over the dinner. That's when she found it. It was an invoice from a materials consultant for $50,000. The payment was dated 3 months ago. The consultant's name was unfamiliar, and their registered business address was a P.O. box. On its own, it might have been legitimate. But the invoice was coded to the big corporate campus project, a project whose material suppliers, he had boasted, were all locked in under a single massive contract with a national conglomerate. There shouldn't have been any outside materials consultants. Her heart started to beat faster, not with fear, but with the thrill of the hunt. She downloaded the invoice. The company had a generic name, something like Apex Solutions LLC. A quick search of the state's business registry showed that Apex Solutions LLC was registered just 1 week before the invoice was paid. The registered agent, the same woman from the payment app transfers, the mistress. He hadn't just bought her lunch. He had created a fake consulting company for her and funneled $50,000 of his firm's money directly into her pocket, disguised as a business expense. It was embezzlement. It was fraud. She felt a dizzying rush of vindication. This changed everything. This wasn't just a husband cheating on his pregnant wife. This was a partner at a major architecture firm defrauding his own company. His partners, the men he golfed with and called his brothers, would be apoplectic. The fallout would be catastrophic for his career, his reputation, his entire life. She meticulously downloaded every piece of evidence: the invoice, the state registration for the LLC, the bank statement showing the transfer from the business line of credit. She packaged it all into a single password-protected file on her encrypted flash drive alongside the hotel confirmation and the payment app history. It was a digital bomb. She finally pushed back from the desk, her body aching, her baby kicking in protest at her tense posture. She looked at the clock. It was almost 8:30 p.m. He would be home soon, expecting dinner, expecting his dutiful, pregnant wife. She took a deep breath and made the most important phone call of her life. She didn't call her mother or her best friend. She called a number she hadn't dialed in years, but knew by heart. The man who answered on the second ring was one of the most feared divorce and corporate litigation attorneys in the state. He was also her godfather. He had held her as a baby, had advised her on law school applications before she'd pivoted to accounting, and had always told her, "If you're ever in a fight you can't handle, you call me first." "It's me," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. There was a pause on the other end, then his voice warm but sharp as a razor. "I was wondering when you'd call. I saw your husband at a restaurant last week with a young woman who was not you. I hoped I was wrong. Tell me everything." And she did. Calmly, concisely, she laid out the facts, the hotel, the mistress, and the fraudulent invoice. She told him about the evidence she had gathered, the neat package of his own self-destruction she had assembled. She spoke not like a victim, but like a client presenting a case. He listened without interruption. When she finished, there was a long silence. She could almost hear the gears turning in his brilliant legal mind. "Good girl," he finally said, and she almost wept with relief at the simple validation. "You've done the hard part. Here is what we are going to do. You will not confront him. You will not say a word. You will act normal tonight. Tomorrow morning, I am filing an ex parte motion. Will request a temporary restraining order, an immediate freeze of all assets, personal and business, and I'll have a process server waiting for him at his office. By lunchtime tomorrow, he won't be able to buy a cup of coffee without my permission, and we will be filing for divorce on the grounds of adultery and citing financial malfeasance that will trigger a forensic audit of his entire firm's finances. Is that clear?" "Crystal," she whispered. "Good. Now go upstairs, take a bath, and try to get some rest. Let Uncle David handle the monsters." She hung up the phone. For the first time all day, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of her decision. There was no going back. She was not just ending a marriage, she was detonating a life. His life. Their life. A wave of nausea washed over her, and she gripped the back of the chair. Was this right? Was this too much? Then she felt a soft rolling kick inside her. Lily. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about protection. It was about ensuring that the man who had so casually betrayed his vows and his business partners would never have the power to harm her or her daughter again. It was about securing their future, a future that would be built on the ashes of his. Her resolve hardened. She walked into the kitchen, turned on the lights, and took a box of pasta out of the pantry. She would play her part. She would make him dinner one last time. And all the while, she would be savoring the knowledge of the storm that was about to break over his unsuspecting head. The sound of his key in the lock was a gunshot in the quiet house. She was standing at the stove, stirring a pot of marinara sauce, the familiar aroma of garlic and oregano filling the air. Her back was to the door, a deliberate pose of domestic tranquility. She had changed into a soft maternity dress, brushed her hair, and put on a touch of makeup. She had to be flawless. She had to be the picture of the wife he took for granted. "Hey, honey, I'm home," he called out, his voice tired but carrying its usual note of easy authority. She turned a slow, deliberate movement and manufactured a smile. It felt brittle, like a piece of glass about to shatter. "Hey, you. Long day." He loosened his tie as he walked towards her, dropping his leather briefcase by the door. "The longest. The clients are demanding, the board is breathing down my neck. You know how it is." He leaned in to kiss her, and she forced herself not to flinch as his lips brushed her cheek. The kiss was cool, perfunctory. He smelled of expensive cologne and something else, a faint floral perfume that wasn't hers. "I'm making your favorite," she said, turning back to the stove. Her heart was a frantic drum against her ribs. Act normal. Let him believe. Let him walk deeper into the trap. "Smells amazing," he said, already distracted, pulling his phone from his pocket. He leaned against the counter, his thumb flying across the screen. A small, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips. He was probably texting her, confirming their plans, reveling in his secret. The arrogance of it was breathtaking. They ate at the large dining room table, a polished expanse of dark wood that usually sat empty, reserved for holidays and dinner parties. Tonight, it felt like a stage. She had set out the good china-lit candles, a parody of a romantic dinner. "This is nice," he said, looking around. "What's the occasion?" No occasion," she replied, her voice smooth as silk. "I just thought it would be nice to have a proper dinner together. We haven't in a while. And we never will again," she added silently. She kept the conversation light, asking about his day, feigning interest in the corporate politics of his firm. She was the perfect audience, nodding and smiling as he spoke about his triumphs, his frustrations. He barely asked about her. He didn't ask how she was feeling or if the baby had been active. He was a performer, and he had an audience of one. It was all he required. Halfway through the meal, he put his fork down and adopted a serious expression. "Listen, honey, about this weekend. Something's come up at work." Her blood ran cold. Here it was, the lie. "Oh," she asked, her voice a perfect imitation of mild disappointment. "Yeah, one of the main investors for the campus project is flying in unexpectedly. I have to entertain him, show him around. It's a whole weekend thing. I'm going to have to stay downtown at the hotel with him, be on call 24/7. I am so sorry. I know we were supposed to spend the weekend nesting." He delivered the lie so flawlessly, with such convincing regret in his eyes. He had probably rehearsed it. The audacity of using his work, the very work he was using to defraud his partners as the cover for his affair, was almost impressive in its depravity. He was using a lie to cover a crime, to enable a betrayal. She looked at him, truly looked at him, for the first time in a long time. She saw past the handsome face and the charming smile. She saw a hollow man, a creature of pure ego, and she felt nothing. The love she had held for him for 7 years had been cauterized, burned away by the fury and the truth. "Oh, honey, don't worry about it," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. She reached across the table and placed her hand on his. His skin was warm. "I completely understand. Work is important. You have to do what you have to do. We'll have plenty of weekends after the baby comes." Relief washed over his face. He squeezed her hand. "You're the best. So understanding. I knew you would be." He had expected a fight, perhaps some pouting or tears. He had his script ready for that too, the classic, "you're being hormonal" defense. Her easy acceptance was a gift he eagerly accepted, blind to the fact that it was bait. "Which hotel are you staying at?" she asked, a casual, innocent question. "The Grand Bohemian," he said, without hesitation. "It's where the firm always puts up VIPs." The sheer, unadulterated gall. He named the very hotel, the scene of his planned infidelity, as part of his lie. He was so confident, so sure of her ignorance, that he didn't even bother to invent a different location. She smiled, a genuine cold smile, this time, though he was too self-absorbed to notice the difference. "Well," she said, raising her glass of water, "here's to a successful weekend then." He raised his wine glass. "To success," he echoed, and drank. After dinner, he retreated to his study to get a head start on some work. She cleared the table, her movements fluid and efficient. She loaded the dishwasher, wiped the counters, and put the leftover sauce away. She performed these final domestic rites with a strange sense of detachment, as if she were watching another woman in a movie. When the kitchen was spotless, she walked upstairs. She passed his study, hearing the low murmur of his voice. He was on the phone, likely with her, whispering the sweet nothings he used to whisper to his wife. She didn't pause. In their bedroom, she packed a small overnight bag with her essentials, the encrypted flash drive nestled safely in a side pocket. She packed a bag for the hospital just in case. The stress of the coming days could induce early labor, her doctor had warned. She had to be prepared for every eventuality. She looked at the life they had built one last time. The king-sized bed with its 1,000 thread-count sheets, the walk-in closet filled with his bespoke suits, and her maternity wear, the framed photos on the nightstand of a smiling, happy couple who no longer existed. She felt a pang of something, not sadness, but a ghost of it, like the phantom limb pain of an amputee. It was a mourning for the life she thought she had, for the man she thought he was. Then she turned and walked out, closing the door softly behind her. She went to the guest room at the far end of the house, locked the door, and lay down. She did not sleep. She lay in the dark, one hand on her belly, feeling the steady, rhythmic kicks of her daughter, and waited for the dawn. She was a general on the eve of battle. Her strategy set her army mobilized. All that was left was the execution. The next morning unfolded with a surreal calm. She rose early, showered and dressed in a crisp, professional-looking maternity blouse and dark trousers. She looked like a woman on her way to a business meeting, not one about to detonate her own life. When he emerged from the master bedroom bleary-eyed and self-satisfied, she was already in the kitchen sipping herbal tea. "Morning," he grunted, heading straight for the coffee machine. "Morning," she replied evenly. "Sleep well, like a log. Got a lot done last night." He poured his coffee, not looking at her. "I'm heading into the office for a few hours before I have to check in and meet the investor. I'll probably just go straight to the hotel from there." "Okay," she said. "Drive safe." He grabbed his briefcase, gave her another one of his quick, empty kisses, and was gone. The front door clicked shut behind him, the sound echoing through the house like a gavel. The moment he was gone, she made 2 calls. The first was to her godfather. "He's on his way to the office," she said. "My man is in the lobby of his building as we speak," he replied. "The server's name is Michael. He's a big guy, former Marine. He won't be intimidated. The papers are filed. The judge signed the ex parte order 10 minutes ago. The banks will receive the freeze notification within the hour. It's done." "Thank you," she whispered, her throat tight. "This is the hard part," he warned. "He's going to call you. He's going to scream, beg, threaten. Do not answer. Do not engage. You call me. That's it. Understand? I understand." Her second call was to a real estate agent who specialized in high-end, short-term rentals. She had the agent on standby. She gave her the green light to secure a 2-bedroom furnished condo in a secure building downtown, close to her godfather's office. The lease was signed electronically, and the deposit paid from a separate bank account she had maintained since before her marriage, an account her husband knew nothing about. By 10:00 a.m., a moving truck, small and discreet, was parked in her driveway. She directed the 2-man crew. They took only what was unequivocally hers: her clothes, her books, her personal computer, the new furniture for the baby's nursery that was still in boxes. She walked through the house, taking one last look. It was no longer a home. It was a crime scene. At 11:55 a.m., she was in a taxi, her overnight bag on the seat beside her, heading towards her new, temporary life. She watched the manicured lawns and stately homes of her old neighborhood blur past the window. She felt no regret, only a vast, empty relief. Meanwhile, downtown, her husband strode through the gleaming glass and marble lobby of his office building. He nodded at the security guard, his mind already on the weekend ahead. He was thinking about the feel of the hotel's plush carpets, the taste of champagne, the look on his mistress's face when she saw the tulips. He was so lost in his triumphant fantasy that he barely noticed the large, impassive man in a nondescript suit standing near the elevator bank. As he reached for the call button, the man stepped forward. "Are you him?" the man asked, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. He looked the man up and down, annoyed by the interruption. "Yes, can I help you?" "You've been served," the man said. He thrust a thick manila envelope into his hand. He stared at the envelope, confused. "What is this? I think you have the wrong person." "No mistake," the man said, already turning to walk away. He tore open the envelope, a frown creasing his brow. He pulled out a thick stack of documents. The words on the top page leaped out at him, each one a physical blow. "In the General Court of Justice, District Court Division, complaint for divorce, temporary restraining order, and asset freeze." His blood turned to ice. He scanned the pages, his mind struggling to process the information. His wife's name was listed as the plaintiff. Her godfather's name, the most notoriously ruthless lawyer in the city, was listed as her counsel. He read on his breath, catching in his throat. The complaint cited adultery, providing the date and location of the planned tryst at the Grand Bohemian. It included a copy of the reservation confirmation. It detailed the payment app transfers to the mistress by name. But that was just the beginning. The next section was the ex parte motion. It ordered an immediate and total freeze on all his assets, personal and professional, bank accounts, investment portfolios, lines of credit. He was in an instant financially paralyzed. A temporary restraining order forbade him from contacting his wife coming within 500 feet of their home or her parents' home. And then came the final devastating blow. The complaint alleged financial malfeasance and embezzlement from his own firm. It named Apex Solutions LLC. It named his mistress as the registered agent. It included a copy of the fraudulent $50,000 invoice. It stated that a motion was being filed to compel a full forensic audit of the firm's entire financial history. He felt the lobby begin to spin. The marble floors seemed to lurch beneath his feet. This wasn't a divorce filing. This was a declaration of war. This was a meticulously planned, flawlessly executed corporate assassination. His first instinct was rage. He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking so violently he could barely unlock it. He dialed her number. It went straight to voicemail. He dialed again. Voicemail. He fired off a series of furious, incoherent texts. "What the hell is this, you crazy bitch? You will regret this. Pick up the phone." No response. He tried to call his banker. A polite but firm secretary informed him his accounts were frozen by court order, and all inquiries would need to be directed through his attorney. He didn't have an attorney. He stumbled into the elevator, the thick sheaf of papers clutched in his white-knuckled fist. He felt the eyes of everyone in the lobby on him. The man who had walked in 10 minutes ago as a titan of industry was now just a man in a suit, holding the blueprint for his own destruction. When he reached his corner office, with its panoramic views of the city he thought he owned, he sank into his expensive leather chair. The reality began to crash down on him in waves, the hotel, the mistress, the money, the firm, his partners. She knew everything, and she hadn't cried, she hadn't screamed, she had smiled, made him dinner, and then systematically and silently dismantled his entire world while he slept. The quiet, understanding wife he had so confidently underestimated had just revealed herself to be the most formidable enemy he had ever faced. Hours ago, he was a king planning a weekend with his conquest. Now, he was a man served with court papers, locked out of his own life, with nothing but a handful of cash in his wallet and a future that had just gone up in flames. The first phone call came at 12:15 p.m., just as he was trying to wrap his head around the legal jargon that spelled out his doom. It was his senior partner, a man whose placid grandfatherly demeanor concealed a core of unforgiving steel. "I suggest you come to my office immediately," his partner said. There was no warmth in his voice. It was flat cold and deadly. "And bring your lawyer." I don't have one yet," he stammered. "Then I suggest you find one. You have 30 minutes. The line went dead. He felt a surge of panic so intense it made him dizzy. He scrambled through his contacts, his mind a frantic blur. Who did he call? He needed a bulldog, a shark. He settled on a name he'd heard at a cocktail party, a notoriously aggressive litigator known for handling messy, high-profile divorces. He called, his voice cracking as he explained the situation. The lawyer's secretary informed him that unfortunately they would be unable to represent him due to a conflict of interest. He tried another firm. Same response, a third, a fourth. It slowly dawned on him. Her godfather wasn't just her lawyer, he was a gatekeeper. He had likely put the word out, poisoning the well, ensuring that no top-tier firm in the city would touch this case. He was being professionally ostracized before he could even mount a defense. He finally found a second-rate lawyer in a small office across town who agreed to see him immediately. The man was rumpled and smelled of stale coffee, his office cluttered with yellowing legal pads. It was a far cry from the polished mahogany and brass world he was used to. He walked into his partner's emergency meeting, feeling like a condemned man. They were all there, sitting around the massive boardroom table. His senior partner sat at the head, the legal documents spread out before him like an indictment. His wife had, as a courtesy, sent a copy of the filings directly to the firm's legal counsel. She hadn't just attacked him. She had made sure his colleagues were the first to know the full extent of his betrayal. "Explain this," his partner said, tapping a perfectly manicured finger on the copy of the Apex Solutions invoice. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. What could he say? The evidence was absolute, irrefutable. She had left him no room to lie, no corner to hide in. It's a misunderstanding." He managed the words, sounding feeble even to his own ears. "A misunderstanding," another partner, a man he'd considered a friend, scoffed. "It looks like fraud. It looks like you used this firm as your personal piggy bank to pay your girlfriend. A forensic audit will tell us if this was the only time. Our preliminary counsel suggests we have no choice but to cooperate fully. We are launching an internal investigation effective immediately. You are suspended pending the outcome. Your access to company systems has been revoked. Security will escort you from the building." Suspended. The word hung in the air, thick and suffocating. He looked at the faces of the men he had worked with for 15 years. There was no sympathy, only cold, hard fury. He hadn't just embarrassed himself, he had exposed the entire firm to legal and financial jeopardy. He had made them vulnerable. Security guards, men he usually greeted, with a friendly wave, escorted him to his office. They stood silently as he packed his personal belongings into a cardboard box. His awards, his framed photos, the expensive pen set a client had given him. It was a walk of shame past the desks of junior architects and designers who stared wide-eyed, whispering amongst themselves. The news was already spreading like wildfire. As he was escorted out of the building, his box of shame in his arms, his phone buzzed. It was his mistress. "Where are you?" her text read. "I'm at the hotel. The champagne is here, but they said your card was declined for the room." "What's going on?" He stared at the message, a bitter, hysterical laugh bubbling in his chest. His card was declined. Of course it was. He was broke. He was a pariah. His perfectly planned weekend of hedonism had evaporated. He pictured her standing in the opulent hotel room, surrounded by the tulips meant for his wife, a bottle of champagne she couldn't open, on a tab he couldn't pay. The irony was so thick, it was nauseating. He didn't reply. What could he say? "Sorry, my wife just nuked my life from orbit. She found out about us. Oh, and by the way, that $50,000 I gave you was stolen. And now you're named in a federal fraud investigation. Have a nice weekend." The fallout was swift and brutal. By the end of the day, his name and profile had been scrubbed from the firm's website. His corporate credit cards were cancelled. He was locked out of everything. He drove not to his grand suburban home, which he was legally barred from approaching, but to a cheap motel off the highway, the kind with peeling paint and the lingering smell of disinfectant. He paid in cash the last few $100s he had in his wallet. He sat on the lumpy bed, the cardboard box of his former life on the floor, and felt the true, terrifying weight of his isolation. He had no wife. He had no home. He had no job. His friends were his business partners, who now viewed him as a liability. His mistress was about to be swept up in a legal maelstrom she was completely unprepared for. He had always seen his wife as a beautiful, gentle part of the scenery of his success, an elegant accessory. He had forgotten the woman she was before him, sharp, brilliant, and meticulous. He had mistaken her love for weakness, her support for subservience. He had built his life on a foundation of lies, and she, the forensic accountant, had found every single crack and fault line. And then, with the precision of a controlled demolition expert, she had brought the entire structure crashing down around him. He was buried in the rubble, and he had no one to blame but himself. 3 months later, the city was settling into the crisp embrace of autumn. The leaves on the trees outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of her new condo were turning brilliant shades of red and gold. She sat in a comfortable armchair, a cup of chamomile tea, warming her hands, and watched the wind scatter them across the park below. Her new life was quiet, and it was hers. The condo was smaller than the house, but it was filled with light and felt like a sanctuary, not a showroom. The furniture for the nursery was assembled a peaceful space of soft grays and yellows waiting for its occupant. Lily was due in 4 weeks, and for the first time in a long time, the future felt full of promise instead of dread. The legal battle had been swift and decisive, just as her godfather had predicted. Faced with irrefutable evidence of both infidelity and criminal fraud, her husband's position was untenable. His rumpled lawyer had advised him to settle, and to settle quickly. The divorce decree was a masterpiece of legal protection. She was granted full ownership of the house and its contents, which she had immediately listed for sale. The proceeds were hers alone. She received a substantial alimony settlement calculated before his professional implosion, and secured by the few assets he had that weren't tied to the firm. Most importantly, she was granted sole legal and physical custody of their unborn child. He was allowed supervised visitation contingent on him completing an anger management course and psychological evaluation. The firm had publicly fired him for gross financial misconduct and had settled with him out of court to avoid a protracted and embarrassing public scandal. The settlement was rumored to be just enough to cover his legal fees and leave him with a pittance. His career in architecture was over. No reputable firm would ever hire him again. His name was poison. His mistress had been a casualty of the war he started. Faced with her own legal jeopardy, she had cooperated fully with the firm's investigation in exchange for them not pressing criminal charges. She had been fired. Her reputation in the small insular design community ruined. She had disappeared, likely back to her hometown, her dreams of a glamorous life in the city shattered. He had tried to contact her once a month ago, violating the restraining order. He had waited outside her building, looking gaunt and defeated. Her doorman had called security, and she had watched from her window as they escorted him away. He hadn't looked like the powerful, confident man she had married. He looked like a ghost. A final brief meeting had been arranged in her godfather's office to sign the last of the paperwork. He was there with his lawyer. He was thinner, his expensive suit hanging loosely on his frame. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed desperation. "Can we just talk?" he had pleaded, his voice raspy, as the lawyers stepped out to give them a moment. Just for a minute, without them. She looked at him, not with hatred, but with a profound and weary pity. "There's nothing left to say?" she replied, her voice calm. "You made your choices. I was a fool," he said, his eyes welling up. "I was arrogant. I lost everything. I lost you." "No," she corrected him gently, one hand resting on her belly. "You didn't lose me. You threw me away. And I found myself. I'm building a new life now, a better one. For me and for her." He had stared at her stomach, at the life he had so carelessly discarded. And for the first time, she saw a flicker of genuine, soul-crushing regret in his eyes. It was too little, far too late. Now sitting in her sunlit condo, she felt a soft kick from within. She smiled, placing her hand over the spot. The gilded cage was gone. Its bars melted down by the fire of her resolve. The foundation of her old life had been built on lies, and it had crumbled to dust. But from the rubble, she was building something new, something stronger, something real. It was a foundation made not of wealth or status, but of resilience, integrity, and the fierce, unshakable love of a mother for her child. And it was a foundation that no man could ever break. The first cry of his daughter was the sound that cleaved her life in two. Not in the violent, shattering way his betrayal had, but in a clean, definitive slice. There was before Lily, and there was after Lily. Everything that had happened in the tumultuous months leading up to this moment, the discovery, the fury, the meticulous demolition of a life, receded into a distant, hazy past. It was the prologue. Her real story began now. She lay in the private hospital room, the early winter light pale and soft against the window. In her arms, wrapped in a soft pink blanket, was Lily. She was impossibly small, her tiny fingers curled into a fist, her face a miniature marvel of perfect features. The love that washed over the new mother was a tidal wave so powerful and all-encompassing it left no room for anything else. It was a fierce, protective, primal force that rearranged her very soul. Her godfather had visited earlier, his fearsome legal persona melting away as he peered at the tiny baby, his eyes filled with a gentle awe. He had handled everything. A birth announcement had been sent to a small, curated list of friends and family. A security protocol was in place with the hospital staff to ensure no unwanted visitors. She was cocooned in a world of her own making, safe and serene. In the quiet of the afternoon, as Lily slept against her chest, a nurse knocked softly before entering. "This was just delivered for you," the nurse said, her voice bright. She was holding a magnificent, ostentatious bouquet. It was a cloud of pristine, white tulips. The sight of them sent a faint phantom jolt through her. For a split second, the quiet peace of the room was threatened by a ghost. It was the flower of her old life, the symbol he had twisted and desecrated. The nurse held them out, and she saw the small, crisp envelope tucked among the stems. His name was written on the front, in his familiar, sharp handwriting. A year ago, this gesture would have undone her. 3 months ago, it would have filled her with cold rage. But now, holding her daughter, the emotional landscape had changed entirely. He was no longer the villain in her story. He wasn't even a character. He was a footnote in the prologue. "Could you read the card to me, please?" she asked the nurse, her voice calm. She didn't want to touch it. The nurse, oblivious to the history swirling around the bouquet, slid the card out. She read, "She's beautiful, just like her mother. I'm so sorry for everything. I will be better, for her." The words hung in the air, a final desperate plea for relevance. I will be better, for her. Even now, he was trying to insert himself into the new narrative to claim a sliver of this sacred moment. He thought this act, this offering of their flower, was a bridge back. But as she looked down at Lily's sleeping face, she felt a profound sense of clarity. He had not built this bridge. She had. And it led away from him, not back to him. The tulips were no longer theirs. They held no power. They were just flowers. She gave the nurse a serene smile. "Thank you. They're lovely," she said, "but the scent is a little strong for the baby. Would you mind? I think they would look wonderful at the nurse's station. Please tell everyone to enjoy them." The nurse's eyes widened slightly, surprised by the generous, if unusual, request. "Of course, that's very kind of you." She took the bouquet, a symbol of a man's desperate regret, and carried it out of the room to become a simple spot of brightness. In a busy hallway, its personal meaning erased. The mother watched her go, and with her, the last ghost of her past life. She had not rejected his offering with anger, but with indifference. She had reclaimed the symbol of her pain and turned it into an anonymous gesture of kindness, stripping it of its history and its power. It was the final, quietest, and most definitive victory. She drew her daughter closer, inhaling the sweet, milky scent of new life. "Hello, Lily," she whispered against the baby's downy hair, her voice thick with emotion. "It's just you and me now, and we are going to have the most wonderful life." The foundation was set. The house was built. And today, on the first day of her daughter's life, she had finally truly moved in. This wasn't just a story of revenge. It was a masterclass in self-preservation. It's a stark reminder that betrayal can awaken a strength we never knew we possessed. The wife in our story didn't just get even. She got free. She transformed her deepest pain into her greatest power, securing not just her own future, but the future of her child with breathtaking speed and precision. Her story is a testament to the fact that strength isn't about never falling. It's about how you rise and how you ensure that those who push you down can never do so again. If this story of resilience and retribution moved you, please show your support by hitting that like button and sharing it with someone who needs to be reminded of their own inner strength. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell for more true-life dramas that will leave you breathless. What would you have done in her shoes? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. Thank you for listening.